On today's episode, we're going to be wrapping over the top of our passenger sliding door. We're going to be wrapping our B pillars. We're also going to be taking down our headliner shelf and wrapping on top of these, just like as an added DIY bonus. Hey everybody, Matt here for AVC and welcome back to the shop. In our last episode, we installed our skeleton framing kit, and in this episode, we're going to be wrapping a bunch of these details in preparation for our wall kit. So the first thing we need to do is go ahead and pull these plastics down. Let's get these down out of the way and get to work. Our first steps are going to be getting some of these areas prepped so that we don't have to worry about overspray on our glue. So let's go ahead and pop these covers off because we don't need these covers on here just for this part. And then we can make sure these seats are out of the way. We're going to tape up these pillar plastics up here at the B pillars on both sides. We're going to pop the bulb seal off, and I think we're just going to tape up some of these riv nuts here too, just to make sure we don't get any glue inside of them. So we're going to be wrapping this area here, and to get this fabric behind this pillar plastics, we're going to need to separate it. Now there are these funny little copper colored clips in here that don't actually like to pop all the way out, and that's okay because we don't need to remove this entire plastic piece. We just need to pop it enough so we can tuck those pieces of fabric inside this seam and then push everything shut. So we're just going to use our panel popper tool. We're going to be nice and gentle. We're going to look along the edge, and right here you can see one of those copper clips. A little bit, kind of. There you go. So we're just going to put our panel popper tool in here, find where that clip is, put it in there, and then just twist. That's all we need to do. We don't need to take it all the way out. This way we don't have to worry about the seat belt, all that kind of stuff. It's going to make the install process much easier. So down here, there's some of these white plastic Christmas tree clips, kind of like the body clips that are outside here. These, we want to make sure our panel tool gets all the way behind that, so that as we separate it, it doesn't break the clip. There's a little black O-ring on there as well. Get behind that black O-ring. Just like that. Okay. Now that popped out of there. There's another one that's down here. This one's really tricky to get to, especially if you've already put your floor in like we did. There we go. Okay. And that's enough. We just need enough to pull this plastic out of the way so we can just tuck that fabric back there. Cool. Yeah, that looks good. Right. So with these plastics separated, let's just go ahead and throw a piece of tape over here so we don't get any of that overspray on. Okay, so we just want to put a little bit over the top of this rivet nut here. I just don't want to get glue inside those threads. And we don't have to worry about any of this stuff because our pillar plastics cover that. Or the blob covers from Go Code cover those. Okay, that side is prepped and ready to go. So over here on the passenger side, same thing for these clips. Just look out for those copper clips. Push your panel tool in there, twist sideways. There's another one here, panel tool, sideways. There's a silver one here, sideways. There's a white plastic plug that I already broke off, so we'll have to replace that. Whoops. And then this one here is actually kind of pinched in with our floor system. So we're just going to have to separate this and like tuck the fabric in there. That's the best we can do for now. Okay. So that's all the plastics separated out. Let's go ahead and pull the bulb seal off. Just be careful not to get this black goo. Usually there's some goo along the seam, and it really just ruins your clothes instantly. So go ahead and separate this thing out. I like to not take it off completely. I'm just going to pull it off of here down to the step, tuck it underneath the van, and then leave it this way. That way everything is aligned. When we put it back up, it's going to go back up much easier. If you completely separate it, it's a little bit more of a pain to put back on. Our last step is going to be taping over just some of these riv nuts so that we don't get overspray inside of them. We don't have to go too crazy trying to tape them out perfect. We just want to get as much glue on the bottom edge as we can. So just go ahead, put a little bit of tape over them. We just don't want to get glue inside these threads if we can help it. Make our life easier. We can also remove the screws that held these plastics in. Now our glue has cured from our last video. So we can just pull these out. The plastics are going to stay in place. And it's going to be nice and clean to wrap over. We're going to start with fabricking this upper edge here first. So we're just going to spray everything from this upper surface here, but really we only need to go about this far because our wall panel is going to come down to here. We're going to spray into this crevice, and then I like to spray the actual return of the metal here. So we're going to grab a little like cardboard spray shield here. We'll get this all glued up, then we'll glue our fabric, then we can start wrapping it in place. Before I put my fabric on, I'm going to go ahead and remove this tape so it doesn't get glued in behind my wall panel. With both sides sprayed and off-gassed a little bit, let's go ahead and just apply it. We just want to go a little long here. You can always trim it back to size, but we want to make sure we don't come up too short. Okay, so then, and just wrap. We're just going to wrap this inside edge first and try to just wrap one surface at a time. And that way you're not going to get like bunched up seams, anything like that. Just push into this crevice here. Okay, then once we're in the crevice, then we can get this underside here. Then we can roll that fabric over the top edge. Our Go-Code plastics are going to cover this edge here. We just want to make sure our fabric tucks in nicely behind it. So just kind of finding this corner here. Let's make a diagonal cut away. That's going to give us a relief for this fabric to wrap up and into position here. Stretching it into place as best we can. Okay, and that's probably going to be fine. We can cut this tag end off now. Okay, then just roll your fabric into that upper space. And this is going to be the tricky one, so let's just cut our excess away. And just trying to make the weave in my fabric as straight as possible here. Kind of manipulating the fabric as I press it in here. And no matter what I do, I'm going to need to have a seam somewhere around here. So let's just wrap it in as tightly as we can. And we'll let the fabric tell us where we're going to end up putting that seam. The back of her knife can work really well to kind of press into some of these hard corners here. With these Makita knives, I try not to rub it along that inside edge because I have rubbed some of that red off of it in the past. Especially on a lighter fabric like this. Cool, okay. So that looks good. I like that it wraps down into this corner. Let's just go ahead and give ourselves a relief cut here. Okay. Then we can wrap this flat out, and that should be pretty good. I'm going to leave it over the top of these bolts for now. And I think I'll use the top edge of this as a line. I'm going to stop my fabric there. So let's start by measuring our fabric out. We can just run it to the top of this panel. That's going to give us a lot of excess. We can bring it all the way down. And let's bring it to the floor and give ourselves an extra 1.5 inches or so. So like right about there. I'm wrapping this with leftover scraps right now. So if you're wrapping a wall kit at home, it's best to wrap your entire wall kit first. Then you can use all those extra little thin scraps for things like this in your van. And we always save that kind of stuff here at the shop. So let's bring this over to the edge here. The first thing I like to do when I'm overlapping two pieces of fabric is give myself a nice rolled edge. That way I don't have like a raw edge of fabric that's going to be exposed and fray. So what we're going to do is just glue a nice thin strip here, fold that fabric over, give it a nice hard crease, and then we can start our fabric wrapping from there. So while that folded seam is off-gassing, we're just going to go ahead and hit our column with some extra glue. Okay. So again, just like on top, we're just going to start with this outside edge. hit the detail spots first. So up here where our fabrics are going to overlap, we want to glue that lower fabric onto this upper fabric. So what we want to do is just give ourselves a little bit of a reveal here. Put our masking tape over the top of that so we can glue that fabric and give ourselves a nice crisp line to follow. So now we're back out with our fabric. Let's go ahead and roll this edge over. Now you are going to see the thickness of the fabric behind it. So you want to make sure this is as even as possible. Okay, that looks good. Now we can apply our glue to our fabric here on the table. So right now I'm just going to lightly tack this into place where I want it, but I want to actually go slightly above that yellow tape. So I'm just going to put it here. Go ahead and peel our tape away, and we'll move it just above. The other thing I want to do is make sure that I'm wrapping here. Let's put it right there. I want to make sure that I have enough fabric when I get to the bottom to wrap my C-pillar section in the center there over to the side. So let's just lightly tack it on top here. Then we can bring our fabric down. Okay. Let it hang down. Then we can just form it into place and make sure we have enough to make all the coverage. At this point, if we need to adjust it over, we haven't applied everything. So we have a little bit of room to work here, okay? So let's just pretend I want to bring it over ever so slightly. So I'll just bring it over a little bit. Then come back up here to the top. Then I can adjust, like right there, okay? Now that's where I want it. So I can just start hitting this main flat surface all the way down. Okay, into this edge. And while I'm here at the bottom, I want to have a rolled edge right here, so I'm going to measure just a little bit out. I'm going to cut my fabric to size here in place. Then I can roll my edge over here. Looks good. Peel my tape away. Then using that same principle we had at the very top, just hit your one surface at a time. So if we're going to roll into this depth of the return here, let's roll into that. Leave that complicated piece for in a minute here. Okay, because we rolled this edge here at the very bottom of the column, we're going to have to reapply some glue to this edge. So let's just take one of our fabric scraps. We can hold it above. That way we don't get any overspray onto our other fabric. Okay. That's all we need to do there. I also had somebody stop by while we're filming, so I got to reapply some glue. So now redoing this edge, just remember, hit your first flat plane first, keep it easy. We're just gonna have to mold over some of these wires. Nothing we can do about it, unfortunately. But once we put cabinets and stuff in here, we're not really gonna care about it either. Okay, so then this return here, we're just gonna try and stretch this fabric as smooth as we can. Okay, that's gonna be good. I'm gonna roll outside the door here so you can get a better view of what I'm doing. So here, we're just going to try and stretch this in as flat as we can. See, we're kind of adding tension over all of this. Okay. Okay. Just like that, okay. And we can kind of tuck it in here behind this wire race. That way we're not getting a bunch of pressure on there. And that should be good. Okay. Again, we're just going to push into these inner edges best we can. This tool here is called the metal majory tool. It's just like a steel tool. We use it to like push fabric into little places. The nice thing is it's not painted, so we can actually like run it along the edge of fabric, and we don't have to worry about, you know, putting that fabric on it. Stuart painted his just so he could see it around the shop. So that's that for now. We'll trim all this stuff when we're done. All right, our next column to wrap is going to be our B pillar here on the passenger side. So we need to have a thin strip of fabric here at the top, but we need a wide piece of fabric down here at the bottom. I like to wrap it in one piece, which means my entire section of fabric is going to be pretty wide. This is about 10 inches wide here, and that's going to do the job for us. We're just going to hold our fabric up here. We want to overlap up above and then come down to here. So that looks pretty good. And I don't need to worry about a rolled edge here at the bottom because it's going to tuck behind the step. And I don't need to worry about a rolled edge here at the top because it's going to go behind our Go-Coat plastics. So this one's super easy. Let's go ahead and spray our glue on our fabric. Spray glue here. We'll get wrapping. We just want to make sure we get a little bit of glue inside this edge. So after we did the bulk of all this area, just go ahead and hit an inside seam right here. Don't spray it like deep inside there, but just make sure you get a little bit of glue behind this plastic edge. Cool. All right. Then before we apply our fabric, let's go ahead and take this tape off. So now applying our fabric into the wall here, this is basically a vertical line. So we can apply the right side of our fabric, just barely overlapping this to the right. Then we know that excess fabric is going to trend this way and it's going to cover the bottom of that B pillar. So let's go ahead and just run it along the seam here. Now we can also use our panel popper tool to kind of push this down into that seam nicely. If you have that metal majory tool, this is a good spot for it too. And if you don't have either of those, the backside of your utility knife is fine. Just don't rub it on there again. So basically I'm going to run my fingers until it's butting up against those plastics. Then I'm going to trim basically on the edge of that plastic, and that's going to give me just enough to tuck it behind that edge. Really what we're looking for is a 1/2 inch reveal. And this is where a sharp knife really helps. Okay, so that's going to kick out, so make sure you don't cut it too short here. Okay, and now we're going to transition to this edge here. Okay, and then just cut it towards the edge of that step. Then that should give us enough to tuck behind there. Then we can get this last little detailed edge here. Okay, so before we start tucking this fabric behind our plastics, let's find where those metal clips are. And we just want to look and see, is this going to interfere with that metal clip? Did I cut it too close, too far? I think we cut them just right, that it's not going to be an issue. So let's try and roll them into that edge and make sure it's not going to bind on that clip. Okay, if it's going to bind on that clip, then we just cut a little bit away right around where that clip is at. This, you can see like it's touching that clip. Here, let's take a peek inside there. Okay. So that's going to be okay. It's not the end of the world. It's going to be totally fine. And then we can just come down this edge here. Same thing. I think that'll be all right. So we just go ahead and roll this in underneath the plastics here. And we can go ahead and just tuck it behind that foam, no problem. All right. Cool. Then just use that flat edge, try and press it down flat against that pillar inside there, best we can. Okay. Cool, all right. Then we can just push this back in, and that's it. We have a nice, good looking reveal here. Nice professional finished edge. Now we can trim to the edge of this here, put our bulb seal back on, we should be good to go. So on the Driver's side, we're going to do one folded edge for the bottom. Okay, we'll let that kick for a minute. Cool. All right, that's all glued up. I'll go ahead and take all the tape off now, too, while I'm here. Over here on the driver, basically we did the exact same thing we were doing on the passenger side. We just wrapped on top of the skeleton rather than wrapping like onto the wall itself. We wanted to make sure this seam in particular was just kind of bridged so that there's no ugliness there, and when the wall kit goes on top, it's just a nice clean edge. Last step before we put this bulb seal on is just trimming this right to the edge of the metal. This will definitely kill a blade on your utility knife, but it's really the best way to do it. I just kind of follow along right here on the edge. That's it. So we're gonna do that all around the perimeter. All of our fabrics are in place. Everything is trimmed to the edge. So we can go ahead and put these plastic covers back on. Remember, they just slide into place. So it's super easy. And then the bulb seal is going to hold this one on. Let's pop that driver's side on. So now with those Go Code plastics back in place, we can go ahead and put the bulb seal back on. When we're putting bulb seal on, when you pull the whole thing off, a lot of times it seems like it stretches out a little bit. So as you're putting the bulb seal back on here, just try to like compress it together. Don't stretch it because it is rubber. So just, put it on there and kind of work it around your fabric. I'll usually start on the fabric side and kind of roll it into place. The key is just not stretching it out. So if you stretch it out, you'll end up with a bunch of excess bulb seal and it just kind of seems funny. And if you just get it into place to start, then you can hammer it on after the fact. We just got finished wrapping all of our pillars and everything here in the build-out area of the van, but I still wanted to do a little bit of work up here in the cab while we're doing fabric wrapping. So I personally like to fabric wrap over the top of this little shelf here. It's kind of a nice little touch. It helps decrease some of the nooks and crannies up here so your stuff doesn't get lost. And this is the time to do it. So we're gonna go ahead and pull all of our hardware. We're gonna pull this upper overcab shelf off. There's some hardware here as well as up underneath the front edge. Now all this stuff under the front edge is covered by these little plastic plugs and discs, and they're really hard to get out without breaking them. So if somebody out there knows maybe a secret to this, let us know in the comments, because I, for one, just haven't figured this one out. I guarantee we're gonna break a couple of these, but it's worth it. And if I have to glue one back in, it's not the end of the world. That's why I only do it on my vans. We don't do this in customer builds because I don't want to mess it up in a customer's van. So let's go ahead and get to work and see if we can get this whole thing taken down. Can you pull that down? Thank you. Nice. Cool. To pull these little eyeglass boxes out of here, you just pull the front lip here down, straight down, and that disables these, or that kind of disengages these front little hooks that catch on there. So just pull them straight down, and then grab that lip and just pull straight out, and then they just pop out of there. And then this little electronics box up here, there's two clips right here at the very front. Yep, and the little metal clips always pop out of these things. So yeah, that needs to come down. Then we need to get these other plastic pieces out here.
It's working better than the screwdriver.
And we need what, a Torx, like T25 it looks like maybe?
Torx?
For the there. You got that, Michael? Okay. Right
Okay, cool. That's to power those lights there. Okay, and then there's one last bolt up here. This one last bolt is the last one that's holding this headliner shelf up, so go ahead and pull that guy up. All this hardware is 7mm for the most part, except for those two on the handles at the very front. So we have the headliner out of the van, and now we're able to actually wrap this space here. So this little tall wedge of plastic here kind of goes up against the headliner in the factory right there. So you're not going to be able to get anything past this point. So that's our back limit of where we're going to wrap. So I kind of like to wrap basically from here, and I'll wrap this little edge too. But then over the top of this, up here, all along this front edge here. Stop being short so I don't have any fabric coming over the top of that. And then I like to wrap into this if I can, and over this handle area, around here, back. So that's kind of the area here that we're going to wrap. So let's go ahead and get a rough measurement of that so we can cut our fabric. So the rough measurement here is 16 by 12. So let's go ahead and cut a couple of 16 by 12 squares, and we'll see if we can wrap into this. So this is 14. Go ahead and cut it a little long. Go to 18 there. So we just have some scrap from wrapping all of our other panels in the van. So something like this, I like to cut this rough edge off of here too. And this is what I'm going to be wrapping, just down into these little nooks and crannies. I want to have a nice folded edge here, and then I'm going to have a rough edge, and we're just going to cut this in place right up against the plastics. But that looks pretty good. So with our fabric ready to go, let's go ahead and mask this off just so we don't get overspray of glue in some places we don't want it. Ian is going to wrap the other side here, but we can start gluing. And then just cut her loose here. So I'm just going to singe this little edge up right here, just so we don't have any raw fabric, anything like that. Make sure you let the glue off gas for as long as possible here. Okay. I like to hit all the edges of my fabric. When it's something like this with a raw exposed edge where we can't fold an edge over, definitely worth just melting those edges back together. We got these little ends fabriced up, ready to get them back inside the van. Let's go. Nice down. Before I install this center portion here, this has the LED lights. It also has the microphone for our auto nav stuff where we're on the car phone. I've always wanted to insulate inside of this, and I've never done it before. So I'm going to go ahead and stick some SM600. Since this is just an open hole here, I'm going to put some of that black scrim layer down just so it looks black from the inside. And then I just cut one of my scraps of Thinsulate off the table here. I'm going to stuff that in here as well. So I'm going to avoid these plugs. I want to make sure this plug is accessible, as well as, what's on this side? There's the microphone plug there. Make sure those are pulled out so I can put those back in. And then I'm just going to tuck it behind these clips. And we'll see if this makes the audio quality on my phone calls any better or not. So that just pops into there. That's there. Then these metal clips just press into this. And just like that. Okay. And before I slide these little eyeglass boxes back inside here, I was noticing there's a pretty good sized cavity on this side inside here. And this would be a really cool spot to maybe throw a USB so you could charge something up on top of here if you wanted it. I'm not going to do it in this right now, but it's something I might do in the future. And I'm looking inside, there's some kind of relay or an electrical kit on this side, but there's still enough room for a plug-in on this side as well. So you could have like a pair of his and hers USBs up here. So you could like charge a phone and toss it up there. Could be a nice little DIY project for a lazy Sunday. Pop these back in. Since we broke the plastic clips on those sun visors, Ian just tossed a little bit of double-sided stick tape here so we can stick them back up. With this headliner shelf back in place, we are all done for today's work. We are going to go ahead and leave this overcab shelf out because I have some other plans. We're going to be doing that in an upcoming video. If you found this video helpful, go ahead and hit that like button. It helps us out. And if you want to follow along with this build out, we're building our 2025 show vehicle. Go ahead and subscribe now, and we'll see you on the next episode.